Hello, everyone. It's Lunar Rising. So, for this month, I will cover Saturn through the houses. And the reason why I chose to cover Saturn is because Saturn is a planet that holds us accountable for our behavior. It also brings different life lessons that we have to learn. And those life lessons really differ depending on which house Saturn is in. So, I figure it will be good to learn what your life lesson is depending on where Saturn falls in your chart. So first, I'll go over what each house represents, and then I'll explain what it means for Saturn to be there. So first house is it indicates how you express yourself in your immediate environment. It's also your mask that you show to the world, and it's also how you are perceived by other people before they get to know you. With Saturn in first house, it can make you appear serious. And even as a child, you can come across as being very reserved, very distant, and it makes it hard for you to be comfortable in your own skin. So, because of that, it's difficult for people to get to know you because you have this really thick wall that you built around yourself. Saturn here can also make you extremely self critical, and that stems from your childhood upbringing where you were raised with the philosophy that children really should be seen and not heard. You could be raised in an environment where you were given married responsibility at a very young age. It could also indicate an early environment where you were unable to express yourself freely. So, a lot of people with this aspect feel like they need to be more mature and responsible in order for them to be acknowledged by others. So, the mentality that you adopt over time is that you really have to suppress your true self in order for you to be accepted by other people. And eventually, that creates the kind of situation where you have a really hard time understanding who you are. And that makes it difficult for you to form your own identity. What's good about Saturn in first house is that it brings a huge amount of self-control, which can then help you stay on track to accomplish your goals. The lesson here is learning to form a strong identity and learning to express that identity and assert yourself without any fears or inhibition. So the mentality that you have to adopt is that this is who you are, and that if people don't like it, that's really their problem. Another lesson is learning to let go, learning to be okay with not being in control all the time, and allowing yourself to open up and being vulnerable. Second house deals with your financial circumstances. It also shows your attitude about material possessions. Saturn here can make you risk adverse when it comes to your finances. So you might have a history of struggling financially in some way, and because of that, you might become extremely frugal in your spending due to your fears of being poor and losing what you own. So some of you might be frugal, others go to the other end of the extreme and you overspend your money on material possessions. Many of you might live paycheck to paycheck and not have much in terms of a saving account or a retirement account, even if you have really high income. So if this applies to you, then you have this misguided belief that personal possession will make you a more valuable person, or that somehow you are more important because you have all these personal all these valuable things. So if you have Saturn in second house, it's really important for you to reflect on how much your self-worth is tied into your material possessions. Another expression of Saturn in second house is that some of you might deny yourself of all material possessions and you don't subscribe to the notion of having to keep up with appearances. So, Saturn here makes you disciplined about your finances, and it makes you overly careful with how you spend your money. But you really have to be careful to not become overly stingy with your money and not being able to share your wealth with people who are important in your life. The lesson here for you is needing to re examine your values related to finances, and reflecting on the role that money play on your self-esteem and your life. Third house deals with the operation of the mind. It also indicates your communication style, your early upbringing, and your relationship with your siblings. With Saturn here, you are easily overwhelmed mentally with new information, so you need more time to process new information. But you are someone who, once you understand the material, you can easily become an expert in that topic. Because it's hard for you to process new information, there is a tendency to feel like you are somehow inadequate or somehow intellectually inferior compared to other people who might process information at a faster speed. You are someone who choose your words carefully, and you're not at all impulsive in your speech because you want to make sure that what you say accurately portray the message that you want to convey. There is a lot of pain and difficulties when it comes to your communication because some of you might have been raised in the kind of environment where your ideas were not valued and you did not receive the support and the encouragement that you need to express those ideas. And because of that experience, many of you might have this intense fear of being criticized. So instead of sharing your ideas, you shut down and you don't say anything at all. Saturn here also brings a discipline and a analytical mind, but it makes you overly serious and you may have a hard time making small talks. The lesson here is learning to trust your own assessment and speaking your own truth. It's also learning to be less critical towards yourself and other people. And there is also a need to be more open minded and being more mentally flexible to new ideas and concepts. Fourth house represents your core, who you really are deep down. It also indicates your home life and how you relate to family, as well as your attitude towards giving and receiving nurturing. With Saturn here, it indicate a childhood where you didn't receive a lot of affection because one or both of your parents were overly strict or harsh, and that caused you to feel rejected and unloved and unworthy. So your response then is to put up this wall to protect yourself emotionally. That way you don't have to feel that pain of rejection. And over time, it makes it really hard for you to connect with other people because the wall that you have is so thick that people just can't get through. Home life feels like a chore to you, or it could feel like a burden to you instead of being emotionally fulfilling. So, some of you might choose to avoid putting down roots altogether or having any children of your own out of that fear of having too much responsibility. The challenge then is for you to learn to create a family of your own because even if you don't, there is a strong possibility of having to be responsible for your aging parents or having other family responsibilities placed on your shoulders. And it can make you feel um, imprisoned by the weight of family responsibilities. Saturn here limits your ability to nurture yourself and other people because you feel like you didn't receive the love and the affection that you needed as a child. So, as an adult, your style of nurturing can come across as cold and impersonal because any form of display of affection is very difficult for you. Saturn here also bring this innate fear of being a mother or having to nurture other people because you feel like you didn't really receive the proper experience growing up to feel confident in taking that role. The lesson for you is learning to forgive and let go of resentment towards the adults in your life because they didn't give you the support or the guidance that you needed. It's really about learning to embody those traits that the adults in your life lacked so that you can nurture and support other people in a way that you wanted to be supported. Saturn in the fourth house also indicate the need to allow yourself to be vulnerable and allow other people to nurture and to support you. Fifth house is a house of children, love affair, and creativity. With Saturn here, it makes it hard for you to be spontaneous and do things just for fun. So for you, fun has to have a dual purpose. So in order for you to pursue your passion, there has to be a practical purpose behind it. Saturn here also makes it difficult for you to relax and be in the moment, and it makes you feel like you need to be productive all the time. You somehow have this belief that if you are having fun, then you're not being very responsible. So it's almost like you always have this deep rooted guilt that you are somehow doing something wrong if you're just having fun and enjoying life. Saturn also forces you to work extra hard at being spontaneous and pursuing things that brings you joy. There is a high level of fears related to your creative expression, and it's almost like you're constantly worrying so much about whether or not your creative expression will be well perceived by other people, that instead of enjoying the experience, you end up feeling very drained, very blocked, and not allowing your creative juices to flow smoothly. As a child, you might have had a really hard time relating to your peers because you were so much more serious and mature compared to them. Saturn here might curve your dating opportunities. So it, or you know what, it could also bring dating partners who are extremely older, who tend to be a little bit more serious in their outlook in life. It can also bring challenges in your ability to have children, or it can bring heavy responsibility when it comes to children. And it can also indicate your fear of having to raise your children because you worry that you might somehow mess up as a parent. The lesson is for you to find way to tap into your creativity and make it fun and rewarding for you. So your lesson is to find an activity that brings you pleasure, even if it doesn't serve any practical purpose. Um, Saturn here is also to teach you to be comfortable with being spontaneous and not needing to have everything planned out. So, sixth house is a house that rules your attitude towards work and health. It's also a house of service. With Saturn here, it brings delays and frustration related to work and finding employment. So, for you, work opportunities don't come as easily as other people. When you do have a job, you are someone who takes your job very seriously because you have really strong work ethics. You work really hard and you expect the same of other people. You could become a workaholic and have difficulty finding that work life balance. And for some of you, your self worth is really tied in with well you accomplish your job. And let's say if you are a stay at home parent, then your self worth is really tied in with your ability to complete your daily chores or how effective you are at completing your daily chores. So, with this placement, being unemployed or being unproductive can be extremely harmful to your physical and your emotional health because your your job play such a huge role in your life. Saturn here can bring delay, or it can also bring a kind of work environment where you're not recognized or validated for your hard work. It can also put you in a kind of work environment where you don't really receive a lot of guidance and support, and you really have to be the one to create different policies and procedures that should have been in place by your superior. So Saturn here can also bring a really weak body. So your life lesson is learning to take care of your body so that it doesn't work against you. It also makes it hard for you to take care of your health because somehow there's always something getting in the way. So the lesson really is to learn to take care of your physical body so that way you don't have any physical illness that will interfere with your ability to work. Another lesson is about learning to find joy and meaning in the work that you do and finding that right balance so that you don't burn yourself out. 7th house is a house of marriage or long term relationship. You are someone who takes relationship very seriously and you take time to really analyze and assess before you commit because you really want the reassurance that the other person wants the same thing that you do, and you want to make sure that they're equally committed to the relationship as you are. Many of you might marry later on in life after your Saturn return, which is about age 29 or later. You might attract a more serious or an older partner, someone who is really accomplished in life, or they have a certain amount of prestige. You might be attracted to partners that have personality where they can be very cold, very distant, and very difficult to reach. Or you might be attracted to a partner who um, who acts more like an parent to you, someone who tells you what to do, who can become extremely authoritarian. So some of you might also choose partner for security instead of true love. So um, some of you might choose partners that your parents want you to marry instead of someone that ignite that passion in you. And this placement also indicate a possibility of staying in a relationship way past its expiration date because of your sense of commitment or your need for financial security. This aspect also indicates difficulty relating to your partner or forming a true emotional bond due to the lack of emotional support that you're getting from your partner. It could also indicate that your partner is emotionally supportive, but somehow you are unable to be receptive of that emotional support. So, Saturn here can cause you to be extremely critical of your partner and having really high standard where there's nothing your partner can do to please you. Saturn in 7th house is a really hard placement because it can make it difficult for you to attract the kind of relationship that's easy. So there is a possibility that you might attract the kind of relationship that can cause a great deal of pain, a great deal of rejection and disappointment. Saturn here brings fears of being in a committed relationship because you know relationship just won't be easy for you. Some of you might view your partner as a burden. Some might feel imprisoned by the marriage and that your freedom of movement is blocked because your partner controls what you can and cannot do. Or they might have some kind of chronic physical ailments that require you to be physically at home to take care of them. On a positive note, though, it can attract a kind of a kind of partner that is loyal, but someone that's not overly affectionate. The lesson then for you is to overcome fears of rejection and allow yourself to be vulnerable in a partnership and allowing that deep emotional bond to form. It's really about learning to let your guards down and not being so fearful of being rejected just because you show your vulnerable side. Um, it's also about learning how to be in a committed and equal partnership where the relationship enhance your life rather than stifling you. It's also about learning to find joy and meaning in your partnership instead of feeling like the relationship is a burden to you. Eighth house is a house that deals with sexuality, death, inheritance, and also other people's money. Saturn here can bring difficulty or delays in receiving inheritance money. You could be tasked with having to handle other people's property, their finances, or their retirement plan. And if there is a family inheritance, you might be in charge of making sure that finances are equally distributed to everyone in the family. Saturn, Saturn here can also interfere with your intimate relationship, particularly in the sexual and emotional realm. So, just like when Saturn is in your seventh house, Saturn in eighth can cause you to feel fearful of being vulnerable in your intimate relationship. You have this fear of emotional rejection and you have this fear of merging with other people because you feel like when you do merge with other people, you are losing yourself in the process and losing that self control. And that fear can cause you to repress your emotional and sexual nature. And that then makes it hard for you to form true emotional intimacy with another person. So, in your intimate relationship, you can come across as being very cold, very distant, and unloving because you just don't really know how to be vulnerable and how to show your love. Saturn in this house can bring excessive fear and worry about life and death and everything in between. So, this excessive worry might not be apparent on the surface, but some of you are so ridden with fears that it's really difficult for you to function in the practical world. So, again, the fear of being out of control can cause this deep need to be in control, particularly because in your intimate relationship, you feel like you need to, it's difficult for you to um, become emotionally responsible and mindful of not becoming emotionally unresponsive or sexually withholding in your relationship. Saturn here also brings this fear of the unknown as well as this fear of anything that's intangible, especially when it comes to the metaphysical realm. So, some of you with this aspect can be highly psychic or intuitive, but you will suppress the intuitive ability due to your own fears. The lesson is to embrace the unknown and and you need to learn to seek security internally because you really can't control what happens outside of you. So the reality is life will throw you curveball, and it will bring different traumatic life experiences such as a divorce, a betrayal, or death of a loved one. So you can't control whether or not these events will happen to you. The only thing that you can control is how you are going to manage when these events occur. So Saturn here teaches you to develop emotional stability and resiliency in time of hardship. Ninth house deals with higher education. It deals with travel and also your philosophy of the world. With Saturn in ninth house, you could have been brought up in a environment that was highly religious or traditional, and your parents might have had very rigid rules about the right and wrong way of doing things. You could be raised in an environment where your parents had really negative views about people of a different cultures or background. And as you grow through life, you really have to assess whether or not those belief systems are in line with your value system. So Saturn here is about the need to find a philosophy that suit you, and the need to find your own philosophy that is more in line of who you are now as an adult. This placement could potentially bring interruption when it comes to higher education, but you are someone who will continuously learn on your own, and you will be an eternal student where you will want to learn about life and other culture. So there is a deep yearning to learn through experiencing life. So that could be by traveling, exploring the world, and being exposed to different cultures and different ways of living. There is a strong need with this placement to be open minded about new ideas, because with Saturn here in the ninth house, especially when you're younger, it can make you extremely close minded about anything that is foreign. So if left unchecked, you could have very rigid view about life, and you can become very pessimistic, very cynical, and easily depressed. Like with Saturn in third house, with Saturn in ninth house, you tend to have a more serious outlook on life, and you spend quite a bit of time analyzing and assessing various aspects of life. So you are someone who doesn't do well at all with small talk. It can also give you a very concentrated mind and allow you to become an expert in areas related to teaching, in publishing, or in law or religion. Saturn here will drive you to search for meaning beyond what's normally taught in psychology or in school or in religion. So oftentimes you will find that you are alone in your search for a belief system that resonate with you, and finding that um, you haven't had a lot of exposure with the right teacher or the right mentor to guide you through the process. So oftentimes you will find that authority figure have been a significant letdown for you, and your purpose really is to search for your own meaning instead of adopting someone else's. 10th house is a house that indicate your career, your social status, your reputation, and authority figures. Saturn here makes you very ambitious, and it makes you want to achieve something tangible in the world. You are someone who takes your career and your professional life very seriously, and there is a deep drive to make your mark in society. But the process to get there won't be easy, since Saturn often brings challenges with authority figure, and those authority figure might cause limitation and delay in your attempt to climb the professional ladder. So Saturn here indicate the need to work really hard in order for you to achieve the professional success that you seek. So for you, nothing is handed, and you have to work extra hard, much harder than other people to get to the same place. Even though there is a great drive to succeed, internally you are also ridden with fears of failure, feeling like you are somehow not adequate to fulfill the responsibility. There is equally a fear that everyone will be watching your every move, and that you will be judged or criticized, and that you will not be able to live up to their expectation. So this notion of being inadequate is being reinforced by encountering a lot of different authority figures in your life who do come across as being very critical and harsh. And they also might have really high and unrealistic expectation of you. And you feel like you can't really live up to their expectation. So in general, receiving guidance and support from authority figures don't occur often for you. And it can also make you feel like you kind of lack the guidance from those in position of power. So with this placement, your rise to success and your accomplishment is really based on your hard work. Um, but with Saturn here, it's learning to find that right balance so that way you don't become a workaholic and feeling overwhelmed by your professional responsibilities. So on the one hand, some of you might become overachievers, where you become such a workaholic that you work yourself to the ground. And on the other hand, there's some of you that might be so ridden with fears that you don't even try anything at all, so you just don't live up to your full potential. With this aspect, there is a need to behave in a responsible and ethical manner because Saturn is a planet that will hold you accountable. And if you do engage in any behavior that's unethical, Saturn will cause your downfall. The lesson here is learning to overcome your fears of failures and seeing that failure is really a part of the experience and that we can learn many different life lessons when we do fail. It's also about learning that success is really not measured in terms of how accomplished you are professionally or financially. Success can be measured by your own standard of what you think is adequate and not needing the validation from other people or from the external world. Um, since you might not have received that guidance and support that you need from authority figure, so another one of your lesson is really learning how to embody the trait of those mentors or teachers that you wish you had and be that mentor for someone else. So, 11th house deals with your friendship, your goals, and dreams. It also indicates how you establish social connections and your interest in humanitarian and social causes. Saturn here brings fears and anxiety in group activities, and it can cause you to feel really uneasy in big organization or in big crowds. There is a need to be accepted, but always feeling like you are an outsider looking in. You also might not join group as readily as other people due to this fear of being rejected. Um, and that rejection could be based on reality or it could be perceived, but somehow you are getting the message that you're not welcome. And some of you might resist becoming a member of a group or an organization out of that fear of losing your sense of identity because you feel like if you have to join a group, you have to blend in and you will lose your sense of self in that process. Making friends can be really difficult for you because of your own discomfort or your own shyness. So you might come across to other people as being very standoffish or not very interested in forming friendship with other people. Saturn here can make it difficult for you to trust other people and to open up to your friends due to that fear of rejection. So you could be attracted to friends who are more serious, more influential, or more traditional. You can be attracted to older friends who are wise and can give you proper guidance in life. Sometimes it can also mean that you will find more meaningful friendship when you are a little bit older. So you are someone who takes relationship, especially your friendship, very seriously. And the number of friendship that you have will be limited, but you will have good and loyal friends that you can count on. So Saturn here can bring disappointment and frustration in your friendship because your friends can be unsupportive, or there's a possibility that they might be emotionally unavailable when you do need their help. The lesson for you is learning to be more comfortable in opening up to others instead of retreating due to your fear of rejection. And since 11th house deals with humanitarian causes, so Saturn here is teaching you to work through your fears of rejection and learning to look beyond yourself and finding different causes that you are passionate about and really fight for them instead of retreating to the sideline out of your own fears. So 12th house is a house of solitude, and it's also a house of institution like hospital and prison. And planets in this house are hidden, so it might take time for you to understand them and work with their energy because their energy is not readily accessible to you. They're not, the planets here are not in your face like the planets in first house, so it's much harder for you to incorporate them in your conscious awareness. With Saturn in 12th house, it brings a rooted loneliness, and if it's not fully understood and consciously worked on, it can also bring about clinical depression. It brings a deep level of restlessness and dissatisfaction with life. So it makes it really hard for you to really understand where it's coming from. It's a feeling of not being able to really connect with other people in a meaningful way and feeling like you're often misunderstood or that people don't really get you. And the reason for that is because you create this wall around you to prevent true emotional connection from forming. And that wall causes you to feel like an outsider in your close relationship. One way to alleviate the frustration and the loneliness with this aspect is to choose a life of service that allows you to help the underdog or the outcast of society, because on some level you really empathize and connect with them. So choosing a life of service will help you to find that sense of purpose and meaning and allow you to connect to something outside of yourself. So just like with Saturn in fourth and eighth house, with Saturn here in this in the 12th house, there is a deep fear around letting yourself go emotionally. There's a fear of not being in control, a fear of losing your mind. So, oftentimes, when you get really overwhelmed, instead of reaching out for help, you withdraw and isolate yourself even more. And so, the lesson is really for you to learn to reach out to other people and ask for help. With Saturn in 12th house, there is a need to be disciplined and finding a spiritual practice that works for you, one that can bring structure in your life. So people with this placement tend to be also, they tend to be wise beyond their years. So that makes you someone who is incredibly insightful and perceptive, and you have this wealth of ancient wisdom that you can tap into that can guide you through life. And that's why you really need a spiritual practice that can allow you to tap into that wealth of information. And many people with this placement are incredibly psychic and they receive a lot of guidance through their dreams. The lesson for you with Saturn in 12th house is really about coming to terms with what it means to feel alone and to be alone and finding ways to transcend the limitation of life through either meditation or through your spiritual pursuit or through your creative self expression. And then with this placement, you will find that it's really hard for you to turn to other people for guidance. So the lesson is that instead of reaching outward for the answers that you seek, you must find it from within. And that's Saturn through the houses. So I know there's a lot of information, but I hope you find the information helpful. So thank you for watching. And if you like the video, then please subscribe. Until next time, take care.